UFC Fight Night Covington versus Buckley is this weekend. I'm going to give you a full card prediction breakdown of all 13 fights on this card, starting with Piera Rodriguez versus Josefine Knutsson. I'm going to go with Knutsson here. I think she kind of just does what Piera Rodriguez does on the feet way better than her. She's a lot faster. I will say maybe Piera Rodriguez hits a little bit harder, but from what I see skill-wise on the feet, I think Knutsson's a lot better. Piera Rodriguez does have a chance to kind of take her to the ground here and control her there and maybe do some damage, but I think Knutsson will defend the takedowns early on. What I noticed in her last fight against Pelostri, who was able to take down Knutsson in that fight, is Knutsson did slow down towards the end of it, so maybe Piera Rodriguez, I think, maybe can take down Knutsson towards the end of the fight, and Knutsson did a good job at finding the wizard on Pelostri, I think, like one time later in the fight, but she found herself back on bottom in a pretty bad grappling position because she was just doing way too much. She wasn't as knowledgeable in those positions. So it does kind of worry me that maybe she won't be as disciplined in this fight and she'll go for crazy stuff and kind of find her way on bottom and lose this fight that way. But I'm going to go with Knutsson here. I think she's way better on the feet. She should keep it on the feet. Technique's pretty good. Power's not really there, but I think she's just going to be a lot faster than Piera Rodriguez and is able to stay on the outside and kind of pick her apart here. So I'm going to go Josefine Knutsson by decision. Let's move on. We have Davey Grant versus Ramon Taveras. This is kind of a toss-up in my opinion. This is a really big test for Ramon Taveras in my opinion. Davey Grant in his last fight fought Daniel Marcos, who's a pretty technical guy. Like he has really good boxing. He also can kick as well, but I kind of compared it to Ramon Taveras a little bit when watching the tape for this one, because Ramon Taveras, he does start a little bit slower. Like he is hittable early on, and he does have moments where he can get caught, but his boxing is pretty crisp. He does a really good job defensively as well, of baiting shots. And Davey Grant, he likes to play counter striker, kind of bait you to throw a punch so he can counter. But what Daniel Marcos was doing is when Davey Grant would counter, he would weave out of the way and then return with a nice combo as well. So if Ramon Taveras' boxing is as good as I think it is, I think he can at least get a decision here against Davey Grant. Davey Grant went to a split decision with Daniel Marcos, which I think is pretty impressive. We know Daniel Marcos is actually pretty solid, so big test for Ramon Taveras. I think his boxing is good enough to where he can hang in on the feet against Davey Grant and kind of make this a little bit of a scrap. I think he can win this one by decision, probably a split decision as well, because Davey Grant's just really tough on the feet here. So I'm going to go Ramon Taveras by decision. I don't see any finish in this fight. I think we're going to find out how good he is on the feet as well. Let's move on. We have Miranda Maverick versus Jamey-Lyn Horth. I'm going Miranda Maverick. Jamey-Lyn Horth got not destroyed, but she got out wrestled pretty badly by Ivana Petrovic. So Miranda Maverick, I think, is a way better wrestler, becoming a little bit more balanced in her game as well. I mean, she lost to Macy Barber, which was a pretty bad robbery a while ago. Erin Blanchfield, she kind of got destroyed in that fight, but it's not really a bad loss to have, especially when you're this young. But Jasmine Jasudavicius, not really that bad of a loss either. She got destroyed in that fight too. So she has been improving. Andrea Lee win by decision, which isn't that bad. Diana Barbosa as well. Pretty nice decision to have there. I think she's just going to out-wrestle Jamey-Lyn Horth for sure. She's getting taken down by Petrovic and controlled there. I think she can do the same thing to Horth in this fight. So let's move on. We have Miles Johns versus Felipe Lima. I am really looking forward to this fight. I really like Felipe Lima. I watched his last fight against Muhammad Naimov, who I think is actually pretty decent. He did beat Nathaniel Wood. I'm talking about Naimov here, but it was like really iffy because he like fouled him like 6 or 7 times. It was, I think, in like Abu Dhabi or whatever, but there was like no point taken away, so it was just a really weird fight. I think he even got like nut shotted Nathaniel Wood, and Nathaniel Wood went down, and they didn't even call that as a foul or anything like that. So Nathaniel Wood, I believe, like appealed it, but he didn't win it. But Naimov had a pretty decent run of success, or not, I wouldn't say success, but more of like kind of luck, I will say. Jamie Mullarkey made his debut and kind of KO'd him there. We know now that Jamie Mullarkey is kind of ass, so Not really too great of a win there, but it was a good win to have at the time debuting, because a lot of people thought Malarkey was going to win there. But beat Nathaniel Wood, Eric Silva injured himself, and then Felipe Lima coming into that fight, he looked a lot faster. He looked a lot more explosive. He looked pretty skilled as well, which I was pretty impressed by. Like, he's 26 and a half years of age, and he already looked better than Naimov, who I think is like 30 or something like that. But even on the ground, Felipe Lima is pretty good as well. Like, he is very good grappling. This is a guy I think people should be looking out for in this featherweight division, especially with how young he is. I mean, you would see Naimov throw all of his power into some of these shots, and then Felipe would just return very quickly, very powerful, and it looked like it was doing a lot more damage as well. So there was even a point in the fight where I think Naimov had like Lima in the clinch, and Felipe Lima just threw him down to the ground, slid right behind him, got into his back, and then submitted him extremely easily. Kind of just snuck in the rear naked choke there, and I thought that was super impressive. He looked very impressive on the feet as well. Again, I think this is a guy to really look out for. Miles Johns, I think, is kind of a little bit of that, a decent test to have after coming off a pretty good performance in his last fight. So Miles Johns, I believe, is moving up to 145 for this fight. I think Felipe Lima finishes I could see him maybe hurting him to the body, maybe even hurting him up top, and then kind of slipping on the back and getting submission there as well. He just looks really good on the feet. He'll eventually maybe put it together in more combinations, but my goodness, Felipe Lima is very, very good. So look out for him this weekend. Probably my prospect of the week. If I were to have a prospect of the week, it would definitely be Felipe Lima, because this dude is legit. Let's move on. We have Sean Woodson versus Fernando Padilla. I'm going with Sean Woodson here. His boxing is getting a lot better. I mean, he's in the prime of his career, but we've seen him now beat Alex Caceres, who's pretty good. Charles Jourdain outboxed him there. That was a split decision, but from what I remember, Sean Woodson pretty much I think it was a little bit more one-sided than what Tapology's saying. But Fernando Padilla, I mean, he's solid. He's still young. He's 28 years of age, pretty much. I think he has the tools. He had a nice elbow. He had a nice body kick. Like, he showed some of the tools. Nice calf kick as well that he did against Luis Puello. That's how I believe you say his name. But I don't know. I think he's still a little green. Still hasn't put it together, in my opinion. So once he does, maybe he can kind of go up against a guy like Sean Woodson. But Sean Woodson, he's built really weird as well. The reach, 78 inches of reach, will have a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's just weirdly long. His legs are super long as well, and his boxing is very crisp, and it is looking a lot better as well. So I'm going not with Fernando Padilla. I'm going with Sean Woodson here. I think he just outstrike Padilla in this fight. I don't think he KOs him, but I think he just outpoints him in this one. I think it's going to be relatively one-sided as well. Sean Woodson continues to look pretty good. After being Caceres, I'm surprised they are giving him Padilla, because it does seem like a little bit of a step down in competition. But let's move on. We have Drakkar Klose versus Joel Alvarez. I'm going to go with Joel Alvarez. He's just way too big, in my opinion, for Drakkar Klose in this one. He's way too big for a lot of guys in this division. The only guy he's really lost to recently is Arman Tsarukyan and Damir Zmagulov, who's no longer in the UFC but was pretty good. There's a couple of fights, like Guram looked really good and Damir Zmagulov looked pretty good, and then there would be performances where they didn't, but he's only lost to Damir, who I think is pretty good, and then Arman Tsarukyan, he got beaten up pretty badly by, but Joel Alvarez is coming off a pretty good win against Elvis Brenner, who, again, kind of beat up, or at least broke Guram. I can't even say his last name, but broke Guram and looked pretty good in that fight. And then Joel Alvarez kind of just went right through Elvis Brenner. So Joel Alvarez is very good on the feet, very opportunistic as well. Like, if he sees a guy hurt, he'll run in and do like a flying knee, or he'll take you down to the ground and beat you up there. So I think there's just a lot more tools for Joel Alvarez here, a lot more finishing ability. He's going to have a 77-inch reach here, 7-inch reach advantage, 6'3". He's just going to be a lot bigger than Drakkar Klose, who's pretty much 37 years of age at this point. He's getting way older. I'm going to go Joel Alvarez by TKO. I think he hurts Drakkar close and kind of finishes him up on the feet. Maybe he takes him down and kind of ground him that way, but I'm going to go Joel Alvarez in this one by finish. Let's move on. We have Michael Johnson versus Ottoman Azaitar. I'm going to go with Michael Johnson here. I think I trust him a little bit more than Ottoman Azaitar. Azaitar, I believe, he was here 4 years ago, came back 2 years later and lost to Frivola. It was the whole sneaking potatoes, like a sack of potatoes or whatever in Abu Dhabi, and they kind of got rid of him, and then he brought him back, and then he got KO'd by Frivola, and then KO'd by Prado. Michael Johnson still has KO power. Darius Flowers, I mean, he's not great. I think he got a win over what's his name? It was on the Contender Series that I somehow like BS'd a crazy parlay because Darius Flowers got like some fluke finish on the Contender Series. I forgot who it was against. Amiran Gogaladze. I think he just slammed him and he got injured. I wonder if they're gonna bring this guy back. I haven't seen him since. I'm surprised they actually haven't. But yeah, he slammed him. Like a plus 300 underdog. But I'm gonna go with Michael Johnson. I trust him a little bit more here. I know Ottoman Azaitar does have power, but I just don't think. I mean, is he Diego Fajea level? Is he? I mean, even Jamie Malarkey. I thought he beat Jamie Malarkey in that fight, and I think even Michael Johnson got hurt by Jamie Malarkey, which isn't a good look at this point. But I just trust Michael Johnson a little bit more durability-wise. I will say Ottoman Azaitar has been going out recently. He got KO'd twice his last couple of fights, so not a good look in my opinion. He's getting older as well. Michael Johnson will have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. I'm going to go with Michael Johnson here. Will he get the KO? I'm going to say TKO finish for Michael Johnson. I think he finishes him in the second or third round is what I'll say. I don't see a way where they can just completely outpoint each other for 3 rounds, especially with the amount of power they have. It would probably just be on Michael Johnson's side if he just dominates Ottoman Azaitar in this one. But I'm going to go Michael Johnson. I think he finds the chin of Ottoman Azaitar here, wins in the second or third round. So let's move on to the main card. We have Navajo Stirling versus Tuco Tokkos. I'm going to go with Navajo Stirling. He trains with City Kickboxing. They showed on the Contender Series like him trading with Izzy and Carlos Olberg. He's still very green, I will say. He got a really nice KO on the Contender Series. Put the dude absolutely out cold. He's still very green, but I do think he can KO Tuco. Navajo Stirling is hittable, but again, his power is just absolutely insane. And I wouldn't doubt that he's on the sauce for sure. I mean, this dude's absolutely ripped. Tuco, before he was in the UFC, he fought on road to UFC against Mingyang Zhang, who actually looks pretty solid, but got brutally KO'd against him in that fight. I don't even think it was a part of the road to UFC thing. I think it was just a one-off fight on the event. Yeah, brutally KO'd there, won 3 fights, and then came back and then lost to Umar Sy by rear naked choke. But I do think Navajo Stirling just, although he is green, he had a really nice combination that he landed on Philip Latu in the second round, where I think I can just see him landing something like that against Tuco and putting him out as well. So I'm going to go Navajo Stirling by KO here. He's a minus 500 favorite. He, again, still very green. Maybe he'll find, or at least be a little bit more comfortable as he gets a little bit older. Like, he's 27 years of age. He's only like 5-0, so he's not super experienced, but in an 82.7 inch reach, absolutely insane there as well. I think he just can find the chin on Tuco in this one. So let's move on. We have Daniel Marcos versus Adrian Yanez. I'm going to have to go with Daniel Marcos in this fight. Adrian Yanez, I know we got the win against Vinicius Salvador. I just don't think much of Salvador, in all honesty. He lost to Jonathan Martinez, who doesn't look that great right now. I'm going to be completely honest. Like, outside of the leg kick from Martinez, he honestly doesn't look all that. Even lost to Marcus McGee in his last fight. That was a pretty close fight, though, from what I remember. And then Rob Font, he got KO'd against. So Daniel Marcos, very good boxing. We'll see we'll see where Adrian Yanez kind of is at this point, because UFC kind of just gave him a layup in his last fight against Salvador. Daniel Marcos, rising contender, beat Aorica Lane, destroyed him, and Aorica Lane kind of just found his way out of that fight, destroyed John Castaneda. Daniel Marcos just looks so much better and has no momentum. Good boxing as well. Does a good job avoiding getting hit. I think Adrian Yanez is just a little, I don't even know how to say. He's hittable in ways that I think guys that are up a certain level than where he's at, than a Tony Kelly would be at, can catch him on the feet and hurt him pretty badly. So I'm going to go Marcos by decision. I think he might hurt Yanez a couple of different times in this fight, but I just think Daniel Marcos is pretty good, and I'm worried about Adrian Yanez defensively in this fight, to where he's going to get caught a couple times and shift the way this fight goes. So Yanez is a very good boxer. I can see him winning this fight for sure, but I like Daniel Marcos, has the momentum, does a good job at avoiding getting hit, and we just haven't seen that from Adrian Yanez. I think Daniel Marcos can put it on Adrian Yanez in this fight. So let's move on. We have Dustin Jacoby versus Vitor Petrino. I like Vitor Petrino a lot. He's a pretty good prospect as well. Lost to Anthony Smith, which is what you don't want to see, but he's getting a lot better on the feet and on the ground, especially on the ground. He's definitely developed that ground game a little bit since the Contender Series for sure. But Dustin Jacoby, I can't pick any of his fights correctly. I even went out of my way to pick him against Reyes. I was actually thinking about picking Reyes too, but I picked Jacoby because I wanted Reyes to win for sure. That was definitely the reason. But I haven't been able to pick any of his fights correctly. Like I picked Down Young to beat him. Khalil Roundtree, he got robbed against. So it really shouldn't even be my fault there, but he got robbed against Khalil Roundtree there. But I picked him against Azmat Mirzakhanov. I picked Kennedy Nzechukwu, and he won. And then I picked him against Alonzo Manyfield, and then he lost. And then I just can't pick his fights correctly. I don't see him beating Vitor Petrino. He's still like a good kickboxer, so maybe he can just find the chin. I mean, if Anthony Smith can land on Vitor Petrino, I wouldn't be surprised if Dustin Jacoby could as well. But I'm going to go with Vitor Petrino here. I like Vitor Petrino, getting a lot better as a prospect. Just an absolute unit and a pretty good prospect as well. Kind of have to go with Vitor Petrino here. Dustin Jacoby has lost 4 of his last 5. Not really a good look at this point. Vitor Petrino has a lot of power as well. I think he can catch Dustin Jacoby on the feet as well, and maybe even take him down at certain points. So let's move on. We have Manel Kape versus Bruno Silva. I'm going to go with Manel Kape here. Good takedown defense, very good on the feet as well, has a lot of power in his hands. I don't think he finishes Bruno Silva in this fight, and Bruno Silva I think is a little bit underrated. He just isn't active is a problem, and his last fight was 4 months ago, so maybe he's going to start getting active, and this is a pretty big fight for him to have against a pretty solid contender in Manel Kape. And his last fight was pretty boring against Makaya, but I don't even know what to even make of that fight. It was just very boring. But Manel Kape, I mean, even after the Felipe dos Santos fight, who I think came into the UFC, that was his debut fight, and against Manel Kape looked pretty good. And then you saw Muhammad Makaya, who's no longer in the UFC, kind of just out wrestle him in that fight. Manel Kape's momentum kind of just went down a little bit since the David Dvorak decision and then the Felipe dos Santos fight. So Bruno Silva coming off a pretty nice KO against Cody Durden, but the thing is with Bruno Silva, he's beating Cody Durden, Tyson Nam, Victor Rodriguez, and JP Bays, wrestlers who aren't really that good on the feet. And I think Manel Kape, who has really good takedown defense, good striking, very well balanced, more balanced than I will say Bruno Silva is, I think he can hurt Bruno Silva a couple different times here. I don't think Kape finishes him. I don't think he puts him out or anything like that, or even submits him. I think he just lands the heavier shots. And I think Bruno Silva, I don't know if he's going to be able to do what he did against a Cody Durden or like these lower level flyweights or an older Tyson Nam, who I think was like 40 when they fought. That's not going to happen against a guy in Manel Kape who's in his physical prime. If he can make weight, of course, we don't even know if this fight's going to even happen at this point, but Yeah, I'm going to go with an El Cap. Just a different level of fighter compared to Bruno Silva, in my opinion. Just a little bit more well-balanced than what Bruno Silva has been facing. So let's move on to the co-main event. We have Cub Swanson versus Billy Quarantillo. I'm going to go with Billy Quarantillo. I really thought about this fight because I, in my opinion, I can see Cub Swanson kind of just staying on the outside, finding a shot, being a little bit more wild, kind of like how Barboza was, where he just shot in a knee and put out Billy Quarantillo. But I watched Billy Quarantillo's last fight against Youssef Zalal, and Zalal really won that fight based on the takedowns and ground and pounding him and finding the back and submitting him. Cub Swanson's not going to take down Billy Quarantillo, and Quarantillo, I think, did a good job at not getting hit in early parts of the Youssef Zalal fight, and I thought that was pretty good because Youssef Zalal's a pretty big dude, has a nice little range as well. The only worry for me with picking Billy Quarantillo, like I said, is the unpredictability maybe of Swanson early in the fight with maybe just throwing a knee or Quarantillo kind of just running into something. I just don't really see that happening. So I'm going to go Billy Q. I think he's going to use the clinch, going to pressure him, keep Cub Swanson on his back foot, and I think land the better and the more shots in this fight. So I'm going to go Billy Q by decision here. People are taking Cub Swanson. I can see it, but I'm going to trust Billy Q in this one. He's getting a little bit older as well, but I do think he does a decent job at avoiding some of the bigger shots. So I'm going to go with Billy Q in this one. Moving on to the main event, we have Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. I'm going to go Joaquin Buckley here. A lot of people are taking Buckley. The people who are taking him by decision, I think that's very interesting because I think if this fight does go to a decision, it'll probably lean more Colby, in my opinion. If anything, I think as this fight goes on, it'd be more on Colby breaking Joaquin Buckley because the goal of Buckley here, he does have like a decent takedown, like wrestling game. I don't think Colby can take him down early on in this fight, but I think if anything, if this fight does go to a decision, it will be basically Colby breaking Joaquin Buckley as this fight goes on, and that's assuming we're going to see prime Colby. He's 36, almost 37 at this point, and he looked really bad in his last fight, and Joaquin Buckley will have a 4-inch reach advantage and is really wild on the feet, and he could catch Colby Covington, and that's what I'm kind of probably going to predict here is Joaquin Silva kind of catching Colby Covington on the outside, maybe even going for a takedown, stuffing it, and catching Colby coming in and maybe getting a TKO. I don't think he's going to flatline Colby. That would be kind of crazy because I don't even think we've seen Colby put out like that. But I don't know why I want to call him Joaquin Silva. Joaquin Buckley, I think, can catch Colby, get the TKO. But if anything, the people that are saying decision for Buckley, I think that's a little bit crazy. I think if anything, if this fight gets past like maybe the third or fourth round, I think it'll be basically Colby Covington dominating Buckley on the ground because I don't know how much of a pace Buckley can keep up against someone like Colby with the pressure wrestling. It's assuming that Colby doesn't get injured, like he said in every single one of his last fights. I mean, Leon Edwards, he was injured against. He said I think within like the first 30 seconds or whatever. I can't remember if he was injured against Jorge Masvidal. I think he might have had like a broken foot. Same thing with Kamaru Usman in that second fight, had a broken foot. I mean, I think the only fight that he came out clean was Tyrone Woodley. So he's just getting older. He's going to get a lot more injuries, especially in fights. Like it seems like he's always breaking his foot or just something in one of these fights. So I'm going to have to go Joaquin Buckley. He has a lot of momentum. I mean, he beat Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, put him out. Nursultan Ruzabayev, and he won that one by decision. I thought Ruzabayev was pretty good too, so it's not like it was like a Wonder Boy or Luque, who's probably on the other side of his career. Pretty good performance for Joaquin Buckley. If anything, I think Buckley needs to get the finish here, but I do think 3, 4, and 5 is going to be a lot more interesting. If it does get past round 3, I will be surprised if Joaquin Buckley is still kind of in the driver's seat. I think, if anything, 4 and 5 will probably be Colby's rounds if it ends up going that far. But I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley by TKO here. I think just catches Colby with something wild, maybe coming in, maybe even a knee, drops Colby, just ends up landing a couple punches after and getting the finish that way. So I'm going to go with Joaquin Buckley, TKO. Let me know who you guys have down below in the comments. Who do you guys have in the main event? And I'll see you guys next